Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, brought to you by City Current and powered by Lipscomb and Pitts Insurance. This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are giving back and making a difference, so we can learn and do the same. We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose. Now here's our host, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're in for an international treat for this episode. So someone who literally has traveled all over the world being an inspiration. We have Cameron Brown. He's an international keynote speaker, a high performance coach, and he's just returned from delivering the closing talk at Italy's largest TEDx event. He loves helping people step up to their next level of excellence and showing what's possible when we tap into our limitless potential. Obviously, a perfect episode, a perfect topic for ChangeMakers. Cameron, how are you doing, sir?
Doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me today.
So the fun of the ChangeMakers podcast, we get to learn obviously a lot about what you're doing today, but we get to learn what started it, the spark, obviously. And in your case, it started all the way in Australia. So give us a little bit of your childhood growing up in Australia.
Definitely. So I grew up in outback Australia. So I was only talking to somebody yesterday. They said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Do you know where anything to do with Australia?" Usually people know like Sydney and Melbourne, and which are on the east coast. I grew up about 9 hours from one of the main cities in Australia. So basically in the middle of nowhere, but beautiful place to grow up, and grew up there obviously with my family. Music was a big part of my life early on. Loved playing the piano, learning how to play the piano. And then as time went on, I actually went away for 2 years, not playing the piano, not learning music. And it was actually two of the most challenging years of my life that I look back on now. I didn't realize this connection between stopping playing and a challenging time that I had growing up as a teenager. But then as I came back to it, I continued to write then and write my own music, which was amazing to be able to help me through the own challenges that I had personally. And then as time went on, I ended up embarking on a coaching course after a pretty significant moment happened in my life. It was in mid-2010, and I heard a neighbor screaming out one night from across the road, and another neighbor and I went across to see what was going on and if she was okay. And she had just found her son had committed suicide earlier that day, in that afternoon. And we ran through the house and out to the backyard to find that a mother with a son lying in her arms. So that was a pretty dramatic time, and I can't even begin to imagine what that family went through resulting of that. But out of that, for me personally, I realized that here I was living an okay life, and there's people that need help. What the hell am I doing about it? And so a few months later, I enrolled in a coaching course. Really, it was just to help some people to overcome their challenges to begin with. But it turned into this beautiful international movement that, impacting millions of people around the world through the music I create, through the talks I deliver and coaching I do, which I kind of had the dream when way back then, but I think when things come to fruition, it's even more magical. So yeah, that's a bit about where things came from.
Well, and let's go back a little bit to the music and where it started. I think it's fascinating that just, in the rural parts of Australia, I mean, in many cases, you had to learn through phone and limited technology to be able to do that. And then ultimately you wrote your first song and submitted it, and you ended up winning kind of third place in a contest, but it put you in front of a very powerful group that kind of launched your musical career. And that video ended up getting well over 1 million views. So share a little bit just on that music side, kind of what led to this journey of starting, especially with the kind of anti-bullying song and where that led to create this catalyst.
Yeah, there were a few different moments, as you mentioned there. I had a beautiful and amazing piano teacher in person in grade 12, I think. Yeah, in grade 12, I learned singing, and it was done through the phone because we didn't have a singing teacher in the town that I grew up in or close to. So that was an interesting experience, and I think an interesting experience in how technology can allow us to experience things in ways that we couldn't otherwise experience. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that continues to evolve and grow as our technological advances continue to grow as well. But as time went on, I wrote a song. It was one of my first songs, and that came third in a competition. That was a great experience, and And as time went on, it was actually in mid 2010 when I wrote that song about bullying and suicide, around the time when that suicide happened across the road. And again, had no idea that would impact so many people around the world. It's at the time of us having a conversation today, it's at about 1.8 million organic views now on YouTube alone, and being used by countless people in schools and dance projects and short films in terms of helping them tell their own story and about the issues and the challenges that they're going through. And so that's been, like I said, an amazing realization that the power of that music has to be able to create change, the power of that technology has as well to be able to reach people that you would not have otherwise been able to reach, because that song and video has been viewed by people in 195 countries now, and by people that I will never have a chance to meet, but has inspired them in some way. So I think there's some beauty in realizing and understanding that technology, when we use it purposefully, the way that a lot of people are using it at the moment is it's creating disconnection in their lives and allowing them to feel more isolated versus feeling more connected. But I've experienced the opposite, and I love that I get to share that with people now, because when we use technology in a really purposeful way, I truly believe that we have the power to create solutions to our world's greatest challenges faster than we've ever been able to before.
And carry that forward to you then physically, because I think it's one thing on the music side to be a catalyst, and then I think it's kind of neat the way you kind of fell into, or I guess you were shaved your head into philanthropy a little bit too, in sense of you used to have longer hair and you shaved it all off to help raise money.
Let's not say longer hair. It was a full on afro, man. People can go and have a look at you can put a link in the show notes to the about page. You can see the afro there. It was 2 years without a haircut, and well, I probably won't grow it again, because the hair is starting to thin out a little bit now. It's I'm not sure how good it would look now, but it was a full on afro. That was the first time of an understanding of giving back. I raised money to in Australia we have a thing called Shave for a Cure, which raises money for cancer research, and so I did that 1 year, which was amazing to do, and gave me my first taste of what it means to do something for others versus just for myself, and that led to what has been, especially these last 18 months around the world, has been many projects to give back around sustainability and deforestation, and helping to raise awareness around things that are happening in the world that hopefully will inspire people to, again, create change and make our world a better place.
And I think that's the cool side of this, is that, you always knew you wanted to make a difference. And then at an early age, it's like, well, how do I do that? And then you realize, okay, wait a second, now I can combine my music, my love of music, my songwriting, my singing, and that can be a conduit. And like you said, leveraging technology to share that, to help inspire and help those who are going through a very difficult circumstance or difficult time. And then on the other side of it is physically getting engaged. So in other words, it's one thing to take your God-given talents, your gifts, to be able to use that on a musical front, but then to step in and say, okay, now, like you're saying, now I'm going to take that next step and physically immerse myself. And obviously starting with shaving your head for cancer research, but ultimately, like you said, getting your sleeves rolled up and getting dirty, getting your hands dirty, and going out there and physically becoming active in these issues takes it to a whole new level. So talk about kind of that convergence, if you will, using the music, but the physically getting involved. But like you said, traveling around the world and doing it, that's a whole different element. Is now you're doing it with different cultures, different people, and trying to obviously learn a tremendous amount about yourself in the process.
Yeah, I've always been a believer in being a living and breathing example of what I speak and coach on. So that goes back to some of the things that I did early on, but then it was about, well, I want to showcase the power that technology has to bring people together and to leverage our impact in the world. So it resulted in me selling everything that I owned in late 2016 and embarking on this global quest around the world. And again, I didn't have an absolute clear representation of exactly what was going to happen. And I think that's the beauty of our lives, is that when we combine a sense of curiosity about what's possible, it allows us to be knowing what outcome we're wanting to experience, but not having to know exactly how we're going to get there. because we can't possibly know how we're going to get there, because we're going to be continually exposed to new external environments that we have never been exposed to before, especially when you're living more and more time outside of your comfort zone. There are all of these experiences that are unknown. And so the beauty about that is when you go into this with a sea of curiosity, it allows you to open up to those sea of possibilities and allow you to grow faster than you would have ever been able to before, versus holding on to something as to an ideal as to how you're wanting it to go. I had no idea, so just some of the things over the 18 months, I became a National Geographic explorer. There were well over 1 million organic views of the videos alone from the journey. There were sustainability projects that I created stories for through videos in Colombia and Argentina and Costa Rica and other beautiful places like that. There was a video that I created that showcased the beauty of Colombia with rainforests and waterfalls and beaches that using a drone. And at the start of the journey, I didn't even have a drone. It got delivered to me in January when I moved to Costa Rica because it didn't arrive in time. And yet just 8 months later, I had a video that went viral that's had well over 800,000 organic views on Facebook alone now, being used by Sofia Vergara's team to help with one of the releases they had on her platforms. There's a documentary that's about to use some of the content. So I look at all of those things, and I think I created this video at the start of the journey that said something like, and I'm going to capture the beautiful sights and sounds of the world as I go on this epic journey. There was no detail about it whatsoever because I didn't have the ability to know that detail yet. And that's why I think about this ability to utilize curiosity to then make a greater impact in the world, because that video was then used in a talk that I delivered to, it was about 700 people in Canada last year, where I had a grand piano on stage and delivered that talk where it was talking about how to make a greater impact and how we can utilize these technologies. I think that's just a beautiful display of how when we surrender ourselves to that sea of curiosity, surrender ourselves to that universal connection, while still executing very fast, because you know what you're wanting to experience and you're curious about how you can get there. And when you've landed on how you're going to get there, you go there very fast because there's a clear direction as to the way that you're going.
What's interesting, I just recently reread The Alchemist, the book, and there's a lot of kind of this just putting yourself out there, following the natural course and following the omens, so to speak, in terms of the book. But that freedom of curiosity, that freedom of following your heart and your dreams. I'm just curious on your standpoint, though. I mean, how much of it? I mean, obviously, most of it was, like you said, it just kind of came about. Did you have a plan, though, in terms of saving up enough money? I mean, I know you said you basically sold off everything and you got rid of almost everything you owned. But how much of a plan actually was there? And did you save up money? I mean, was it one of those where you just said, no, let's throw it out there and let's just see? Or how much of it actually was planned out on your end?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there was absolutely partly planned out. I knew what I wanted to show the world, which was that you can use technology to speed up the impact that you can make, that you can build relationships from anywhere in the world, that you don't need things to be happy. They were the kind of the outcomes that I was wanting to showcase in the world, because they were three things that I had come to realize were extremely powerful. In addition to the sea of curiosity as well, I had just started to realize the power of that. And I think the beauty about when it comes to that sense of surrender is about consciously guiding your curiosity. So yes, while I still ran a coaching company, so I still spoke across the 4 continents and had speaking engagements in those 4 continents, but I didn't speak as much as what I had in previous years because I was out in the rainforest at times. So to speak to maybe some animals or something like that, there wasn't the opportunity to do that as much. But I continued to coach people virtually, which I continue to do now, helping them break through. So there were still coaching clients that I had in Australia and Canada and other parts of the world. So that continued on, and that was the way in which I knew that I could continue doing what I was doing in this project, because I knew that there was a way to generate clients, there was a way to convert those clients, there was a way to serve them in the best way possible and allow them to get amazing results. So there was absolute certainty in that. which is what allowed the curiosity to be there. And I think that's really important, is you've got to have a sense of certainty about where it is that you are to allow yourself to play in the unknown, because our core mechanism is survival. And if you feel completely unsafe, then the chances of you reverting back to survival instincts, which is fight or flight, it increases. So having the certainty, whether it's backing yourself because you've got money in place, whether you're backing yourself because you know that you're going to be able to produce the results, you've got to have, I feel anyway, this sense of certainty about the way in which you're going. That, don't confuse that with having to know all the answers, though, because having to know all the answers means you'll never move. It's perfectionism, and perfectionism never comes to fruition because nothing ever becomes perfect. That's the beautiful thing about our world, is that everything is imperfect. And so when you understand that the certainty needs to come from that element of backing yourself in some way, shape or form, to then be able to play in the unknown and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. One of the great things that one of my mentors once said years ago now, which is the quality of your life will be in direct correlation with the amount of uncertainty you can handle. And I love that, because really what it's saying is that the quality of your life will be in direct correlation with the amount of time you spend outside of your comfort zone. Yeah, because inside of your comfort zone is where everything is that you already know, which is not going to get you anywhere else, right? It's going to keep you stuck.
Well, I think both of those pieces are major bits of very valuable advice. Talk about, on your end, the traveling, but also the fact, I like the fact that you live everything you're talking about. So you started as a vegetarian, now you're 100% plant-based in terms of your diet. How do you maintain that traveling as much as you do? That's a pretty strict diet to be able to manage. But on your end, obviously it goes with your philosophy on life. So talk about that side of it as well, just your diet and how you stay physically fit, and where you draw your energy.
Yeah, it does. It is a big part of my life. It's a big part of my belief system as well, because especially going out to these different places and realizing and understanding that the biggest cause of deforestation is from cattle ranching, like in the Amazon, for example. So for me personally, if I can find an alternative to that tastes as good or better, that is as good for me, but better, and is also better for the planet as well, then that's just a logical thing for me to do. But yeah, it does take more planning. There's no doubt about that. There's each place that I've moved to, there's a few different prerequisites for. Often there'll be a grand piano in the apartment that I'm living in, or the house that I'm living in, that I'm leasing. There'll be a good kitchen where I can actually buy my food and make food for myself rather than having to eat somewhere else. So that's often a big part of it. But then, as with the different projects that I've embarked on, and usually it's partnered up with a different organization, I will be asking them and asking them questions ahead of time before I actually go there, before we embark on the project. Is this okay for us to do? Is there going to be options for me to be able to eat, for example? So that, while there's been some really rural places like a sea turtle project in Costa Rica, and up in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in Colombia, in the middle of the rainforest, and just mountains all around and waterfalls and all that kind of stuff, I knew ahead of time that my food preferences were 100% going to be taken care of. So that's happened across the board. So yeah, it does take extra planning, but when it's again, it comes down to, well, what is aligned to my beliefs, and how can I make sure that I'm living and breathing that every single day?
That's right.
So that's from an eating point of view. From an exercise point of view, as I've traveled, yoga has become a big part of my life, as well as meditation. I also take time where I only had this yesterday, so I took a completely technology-free day. This is after, we had a massive launch of we may talk about this shortly, but it's a video that included people from 40 countries around the world. Yep. It was a mammoth project that was to do with the talk in Italy, and yeah, there's an element of exhaustion that came after that, of living for a period of time on very much adrenaline, and just a massive workload. So yesterday I took completely free from technology. I call it tech and time free days, where I don't even know what time it is. let alone free of technology. And I do whatever I feel like doing. So yesterday there was actually a lot of sleep. Then there was a walk around the city as well, and just being there in the moment, not needing to know what time it was, not needing to know what's the latest on social media, just allowing myself to recharge. And I needed that so much. And I think as we are exposed to new levels of and increasing levels of stimuli through the use of technology, for me especially, and I know for a lot of those listening in will be the same, is that we are being exposed to an extreme amount of stimuli now through the use of technology, through the use of social media. And if we're not consciously managing that, it can end up wearing us down, because there's no time to recharge. There's no time to replenish that energy. The beautiful thing about sustainable management of energy is that you've got to expend that energy, but you've also got to replenish that. And so, taking that tech and time, free time is incredibly valuable for me personally. I've also just started floating as well, so float tanks, which has been amazing for a quick, complete sensory deprivation, where there's no sound, there's no visual, and there's no gravity either, because you're floating in that water. So that's been amazing as well. So I consistently look for ways in which I can hack my own energy to allow myself to get the most out of myself, and allowing myself to then serve in the best way possible.
So there's actually, so we're in Memphis. I don't know that I've ever heard of a float tank. That's pretty cool. So basically you're just floating in like a pool, or floating in a swimming pool, and just kind of using that to calm. Is that kind of the idea?
So float tanks, I mean, they are relatively new. I'm in Denver in Colorado right now. And so there's a number of facilities here. So there's facility setups, and there's pods or cabins that you go into, and you have this pre-stuff that you do, and you get in there, and there's a huge amount of what I assume is like the Epsom salt type of stuff, where you're sitting there and you're actually floating, so you can't really sink. It's that buoyant, and you close down, and there's no lights whatsoever. You can choose with the place that I've gone to anyway. You can have music on if you want, or you can have it completely silent. You have these earplugs that go in to keep that water out and keep the sound out as well. And yeah, it's complete sensory deprivation, which is beautiful. Again, beautiful to be able to do if you are. It's like meditation on steroids, where if you're meditating, you might be sitting there, but there's other sounds coming in, and there's other things coming through your senses. Whereas in a float tank, it is complete sensory deprivation, which allows you to replenish that from an energy point of view. I believe there are some other health benefits as well, but for me personally, it's been very much, especially through this period of this launch, where I haven't had much time. I think that's the good thing about it, is finding things that allow you to get the most out of your time as possible, and that's what it is for me. 90 minutes there, and you walk out feeling pretty light and ready to take on whatever's coming at you next.
So let's talk about the Thriving Collective. This is you're the founder of this organization, and there's events, there's all sorts of different dynamics. The website is thrivingcollective.com. Talk about that, and then we'll switch over and talk about, as you said, the 40 different countries and the project that you guys are working on now and just recently released. So talk about the Thriving Collective overall, though.
Yeah, the mission of the Thriving Collective is very much about inspiring people to make a greater impact in the world, and really showing how it's done. So there's a few key elements to it. There's the speaking that I do personally through different talks, and the multi-sensory experiences that I give on stage through the use of a grand piano on stage, the film footage of mine from around the world, and then the actual education component of that, whether it's talks about high performance, creativity, emotional intelligence, those types of topics, and how we can really thrive in a digital age. There's the coaching that's done. So there's breakthrough days that I personally do with high performing clients around the world, helping them to really break through to that next level. What you find is that as you guys tuning in, as you are exceeding the levels that you believe you're unconsciously worthy of, which will, as a high performer, will continue to happen at a rapid rate because you are constantly stepping up to that next level of excellence. We tend to exceed that level we believe we're worthy of, and if we're not careful, we'll either sabotage our efforts. The key is, though, to shift and up level our thinking. So that's what the overall organization is all about, and it's definitely what happens within the coaching. And then the third component to to the company are the projects that again show how it's done. So that was the 18-month project. It was the latest one with the people with 40 countries around the world, which included the talk in Italy. And it really is. It's in implementing projects that showcase how the topics that I speak and coach on come to fruition. So that it gives people a living and breathing example of what it looks like, and allows some really cool people to get involved around the world to utilize their own unique talents and strengths to be a part of something greater than themselves. So I think that's a beautiful thing to be able to gift people, is allowing them to be a part of something greater than themselves, which gives life meaning and a greater sense of purpose.
And so, put a little bit more meat on that in terms of there is still time. 80 strangers, 40 countries, one message. Talk about, taking that. What is your, I don't say your end goal, but I mean, what do you hope? Well, describe it a little bit more, and then describe what you hope that really it accomplishes. What are your goals with it?
Sure thing. Massive project. I don't think I realized how big it was until it all came to fruition. So earlier this year, I was invited to give the closing talk at Italy's largest TEDx event. It was going to be my first time traveling to Europe alone, let alone Italy. So love that it was for that purpose specifically. And the talk that I delivered was very much about the surprising power of curiosity, and how when we like what we've talked about, when we blend that with technology in today's day and age, we can speed up and magnify our creativity, our innovation, and our impact in the world. And again, I had many stories from the last 18 months of this framework and this idea that I had being extremely powerful, but I wanted to really demonstrate it in a specific project and to really bring it to life. And so I ended up working secretly with over the 4 months leading up to the event, secretly worked with more than 80 people from 40 countries around the world to produce a music video. It was to one of the songs that I wrote while traveling the world last year. I wrote it after spending time living in the Colombian rainforest. And when I moved to Argentina, I had a grand piano in the apartment there, and wrote that song within the first week of living there. And so we pulled this together. People recorded their part of the video and audio in their studio, and the video out wherever they wanted to go in the world. So we had people record in front of mountains and rivers and castles and ruins and all these other crazy locations in countries like Japan and South Korea and Jordan and Macedonia and Venezuela and Argentina and many other places around the world. So amazing to have all that come together. For my part in the video, we actually transported a grand piano to a place called Garden of the Gods in Colorado, which is this beautiful red rock formation with mountains off in the distance. We did that, transported it at sunrise to film with a commercial drone videographer and close-up video cameras as well to really pull it all together. And we brought that into an animated split-screen video that shifted and changed and evolved throughout the song. And that played on the big screen while I played the song live on a grand piano at the event. So it was remarkable to do. Nobody knew it was happening, aside from the organizers of the event. And even though they only saw the video for the first time, I think about 2 or 3 days before the event. So it was kept very, very secret, and I wanted to keep it that way. They knew it was going to be something extraordinary because I gave them some updates. But people didn't actually see it outside of the artists and outside of the people that were actually working on the project. Which again, I just wanted to keep it that way because I wanted to show how technology really can be used in a really amazingly remarkable way, and even when nobody even knows about it. So it was a great demonstration of that, a great demonstration of how curiosity works. Because for me, I was living in Mexico at the time when dreaming up what we could create with this, and it was about giving myself the space to create first and foremost. That's the biggest part, first and foremost, of allowing these ideas to come into fruition, rather than forcing the ideas. That magic flows through you rather than you trying to create it. And all of a sudden, these ideas came through about how I could bring this idea to fruition. And a really important part of that is asking powerful questions to be able to guide that curiosity. to be able to guide it in a way and in a direction that you're wanting it to go, without again needing to know exactly how it's going to come to fruition. So yeah, that was the major part of the project, and now the video released on its own as a music video, which is the song called "There Is Still Time," and it really is off the notion that there is still time for us to turn things around. It's just going to take each and every one of us to take responsibility for that and utilize our talents and strengths to make an impact and make a difference in our own unique way. It doesn't have to be through music. It can be through business. It can be through the development of something completely different. It can be a technology that you build. But it really is going to take each and every one of us to take that responsibility to turn things around. And so, yeah, the ultimate goal, the ultimate hope is that people utilize the power of curiosity in purposeful ways, combine that with technology to speed up the rate at which we ultimately evolve as a human race, and live more in alignment with our planet to allow us to thrive for many, 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 many generations to come. Because at the moment we're it's pretty straightforward to see, we're living out of alignment with our planet. And yes, we might be able to reach other planets, but are we going to get there in time before we've destroyed what we've got here? And is that going to allow us to really thrive at a level of excellence that I believe only really comes when we're living in alignment with our surroundings, with our universe? So I would much rather see us as a human race being better stewards of the planet and thriving at the same time, because I want to travel to other planets before I finish up at this lifetime, right? I want to see and experience those amazing things that happen when we explore in a way that is in alignment with our universe versus out of alignment. So that's the ultimate. It's a pretty utopian type of vision, but every step counts, and hopefully this is a big part of that.
So give us maybe a couple of things. I mean, obviously you've learned endless amounts about people and how to inspire them and get them to realize, the priorities and how to make a difference. Give us maybe a couple of lessons that you've learned through all your travels and through your work and using technology and the music. What are some things that you've learned, especially in other countries and different cultures? How do we work together? How do we live together? How do we create together? How do we become more curious and creative? But how do we, like you said, become better stewards of the environment? What are some lessons that you've learned? Give us just maybe a few top ones that come to mind.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind as you were talking then is one that I've really understood for a number of years now. But it's solidified again throughout these experiences around the world, and it's becoming your own best friend. If you are not your own best friend, here's a few things that happen. First up, you believe you're not enough unconsciously, which means that you need external things, external sources, to know and validate your worth. That comes in the form of relationships. It comes in the form of materialistic things. It comes in the form of a business, for example. The thing is that if your worth is based on the external world, then you are requiring yourself to manipulate that external world in order to fit into that external world, in order to have that value. So it can end up being, this is where things like narcissism come in, where people are manipulating relationships to get that validation back about how good somebody is, for example. It can come in the form of other manipulation of relationships. It can come in the form of needing to buy things to prove my worth, cars, houses, boats, those materialistic things to show my value, versus knowing that I am the value, and those external things become an enhancement of that rather than a filling of a void for something internally that I believe I don't have. So I think that, I believe that a huge amount of the greatest challenges that we're being exposed to right now come from that sense of lack. Is that I don't believe unconsciously I'm enough, therefore I need to prove that, and that comes in at the expense of the planet. So for me, I'm all about still buying things and experiencing things and all of that, but do it in a way that is purposeful, that is conscious, that is in alignment with why you're actually here, rather than using it to fill some form of void. So that kind of leads into the second point, which I'll come up to in a moment. But really becoming your own best friend, because that way you don't need anything else or anyone else to know that you're enough. You're enough and you're whole and complete internally. And then all of a sudden, this beautiful world of ours just becomes an extension of that. You don't need to overpower anything. You don't need to squash anything. You don't need to do anything external to people or things or situations to prove that worth. It just becomes an extension of who you are. So that's probably the biggest lesson, because that everything else, I believe, flows from that. And then I think the other part, which I led to a moment ago, is knowing why you're here, is that sense of purpose. Is it's one thing to have that best friend nature to you, which is a beautiful place to start, because all of a sudden you're coming from a pure place rather than a place of lack, which is, well, why am I here? Oh, I need to succeed here and I need to succeed here. It's, well, I know that I'm enough already, so now why am I here? That's a beautiful different place that you're coming from in that moment. And if you're able to come from that space, asking that question of, well, why am I here and how could I make a greater impact in the world? What is that sense of purpose that I have? Giving yourself the space to be able to allow that answer to come into existence. And notice that I mentioned, it's not about creating that answer. It's not about coming up with that answer. It's allowing that answer to flow through you. I learned this many years ago through the music that I create, which is that when I try to write a song, I'm really bad at it. But when I allow that music to be written through me, somehow magic happens. And if you look at and listen to the stories of the greatest creators and the greatest geniuses of our time, they're simply a vehicle for those ideas, for those creations to flow through them. When we learn how to co-create with the universe, because at the end of the day, science is even proving this now, that everything is connected. And so if everything is connected, then why wouldn't we do things and allow space for that connection to flow through us? And that's another really, really valuable lesson, because when we try to and like almost force things to come into existence, then it's almost like we're going against the very thing that created us in the first place, this universe. Now, whether you call that God, or if you're religious or spiritual or scientific in the form of just the universe is, and this is how it created through the Big Bang. Like there is a universal intelligence, whatever you want to call it, right? So why not be attached to that universal intelligence rather than separating from that? That is just a beautiful way to create, and I found the most magical things have flown through as a result of that, versus when I try to write a song or try to create a business idea or a concept or marketing strategy, and it all falls to shit.
How do you manage? I'm just thinking in terms of technology, and even going back to knowing your self-worth, which I mean, I agree. But I'm curious on your end, managing the good with the bad with technology. So in other words, being able to leverage technology for the good of inspiring others and getting them to see the issues, but how they can be a catalyst to be a part of the good to help solve those problems. At the same time, though, when you've got pictures of everything is good and I've got the greatest clothes and cars and fashion, we're all putting on this kind of facade through social media that says you're not good enough unless you have this. So in other words, technology is good, but at the same time bad. And you look at all the politics and the hate in many cases that get spewed out using social media. I'm just curious, how do you use it to draw the inspiration and the energy and use it for good versus getting sucked into that kind of despair or that cycle where social media and technology can also lead to negative as well? How do you manage the positive within the negative?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important thing for us to cover, because for me, working in this field for this many years, doing this as a company and helping people through this, I still have to consciously manage my state around this, because we are constantly being exposed to new and ever increasing level of stimuli in different ways, different external environments. And this is where, from a management point of view, the first thing I'll say is that we've got to realize and understand that technology isn't the core problem here. It's simply pointing to it and magnifying it. And this is what goes back to what we talked about before, is if I feel that I'm not good enough unconsciously, then I will have to find myself using social media to prove that worth, which again, as you mentioned, comes the highlights reel. Then if and also though, if I feel unconsciously that I'm not enough, and then I see somebody else's highlights reel, I'm going to be starting to compare myself to that person, because my focus is actually on, even though I want my focus to be on how I am enough, my unconscious focus is on how I'm not enough. And where focus goes, energy flows. And so we're in a never-ending cycle. As long as we fail to get to the core problem as to what's playing out here, which again, at the end of the day, is that we're feeling not whole and incomplete. As long as that cycle is going on, until you realize that there is a whole and completeness there, and you work on that and you develop that, and that takes time, energy, that takes effort to actually do, to let go of the things that are seemingly there, but as you let go of them, you understand that they actually weren't, that you were whole and complete to begin with. It's just that these limiting beliefs and patterns of behavior have formed over time. But technology is speeding up the rate at which we uncover how we really feel about ourselves. And that comes back to, you've got to be managing yourself. And this comes back to emotional intelligence, understanding why is it that I'm feeling this way? And even more importantly, how can I do something about this? So when I find myself being sucked into that field of whether there's a negative nature to it, or scrolling through a social media feed, for example, I've got ways in which I can remove myself from that. One of those ways is what I mentioned before, is having a technology-free day, which allows me to know that I'm actually the one in control here. I'm choosing, right? I'm not being chosen as to how I'm going to respond. I'm choosing how I'm going to respond to this. Another is ensuring that I have, like for me now, at the start of this year, I noticed that the energy was being depleted too much. So I removed all the notifications from my phone. I haven't switched them back on. So I only am being spoken to when I choose to be spoken to, rather than when somebody's got a notification that I have to listen to, supposedly. So the key thing here is feeling and having that sense of control, knowing that you are the one that's choosing, rather than the technology choosing you. Because at the end of the day, that's what, again, like companies have got to take some responsibility for this, but we've got to take the larger responsibility for this. Because at the end of the day, they want you using their products and services more. That's just business. That's not going to change anytime soon. That's good business, right? Is having a product or service that people want to utilize, that make their lives better. The thing that makes our lives worse from the use of technology is us. It's how we're using them. It's how we're choosing to use them, right? And so all of a sudden, that's a couple of ways. The other thing as well, though, I really want to drive home here is, and I listened to this. I can't remember where I heard it. It might have been in an audio. I think it was in an audio book. And the name escapes me. I can't remember which publication it was. But it was follow somebody who believes the exact opposite to what you believe. And I found that really interesting, because what's happening in our worlds today is that we are, social media in particular, is creating these biases that is feeding us content that that reinforce the beliefs that we currently have.
Right. It's forming groupthink and mob mentalities. Exactly right.
Exactly. And so all of a sudden we're creating this segregation, and it's becoming amplified. Whereas if we tune in to the beliefs that other people have that are, in complete contrast, and they will push your buttons, right? They will push your buttons, but it's beautiful, I find, because there have been, certain belief systems that I don't believe necessarily at my core, but there have been times where I've listened to and taken in what that person has said, and had me realize, that person's actually reason for that at their core is also love. They're just expressing it in a different way. They want a sense of belonging. They want a sense of meaning. They're just expressing it in a completely different way to the way that I would choose to express it. And so when we realize that, you mentioned about togetherness and diversity,
right?
That's real. To me, that's an extremely important thing, because if we continue down this road of you're right, I'm wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, and anything that you say is completely inadequate and completely wrong, that's just going to create more division rather than seeing where somebody's coming from and seeing how we can work together to create a solution. And I mean, that was another big reason of creating the music video for There's Still Time. You know, we had people from all different religions, all different belief systems, genders, and color, and all these other division that is created in the world. We created that in a way to show that, you know, regardless of our differences, we are stronger together. And it is going to take for each and every one of us to again utilize these technologies in a way that can help to advance our ability and our impact in the world, but at the same time have compassion for the world and compassion for people in the world and the way that they're experiencing it at the moment.
Well, I think just, key takeaways on everything you said, the power of knowing your purpose and staying focused, that's huge. And then also too, to your point, the more you travel, the more you meet people, you realize, we're all grounded in love. And like you said, we may choose to show that a different way that may not be the same as I would show it or you would show it. But once you start getting to know people, you realize that we're way more alike than we are different. And that becomes the common ground to work from. Let's go ahead and switch over. As we kind of wrap up, because we're running close on time, is we just call it a lightning round. But basically, I just ask a few short questions and you give me just kind of short answers. It's just a fun way to get to know you a little bit better. But let's start with, what's a recent book that you've read?
Recent book I've read is I've reread The Way of the Superior Man, David Dieter, which is an amazing book. The other one that I really want to mention because it's been amazing is Loop Tale by Bruce Puntip. It's a little while ago that I read it now, but it's still been an amazing book in social entrepreneurship and being able to build an extraordinary company while making an impact at the same time.
I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite spot because you've traveled to so many places, but give us maybe one or two of your favorite highlights in terms of a country, a city, even a physical destination. But give us some of your favorite spots that you visited.
I mean, Colombia just stands out big time because it challenged the absolute hell out of me in terms of those contrasting experiences where I saw, because we went to places where there was trees being cut down in front of my eyes and mining companies moving into pristine areas of jungle. And so it's experiencing that contrasting experience of majestic beauty of a country, but also the destruction that's happening some places as well. That was a really challenging experience of having me step up to a new level of excellence, of being able to stay optimistic in the face of crazy stuff happening.
What are you someone that when you talk about inspiration, especially writing your music, is it late at night, early in the morning, middle of the day? Where does inspiration usually happen to you, or when does inspiration usually happen?
Yeah, I'm so different to what people call musicians. I don't really see myself as a musician anymore because I'm more of a storyteller. But for me, the early in the morning, I'm easily the most creative. Late at night, I'm usually asleep, ready for the next day. So usually early morning. I love being up early. Love getting stuff done. Love being creative in that space, and know that that's definitely my space there.
It doesn't have to be a celebrity, but give us someone in particular that you've enjoyed meeting or had the pleasure or honor of meeting.
I met Tony Robbins very briefly, and he's been an amazing inspiration, an amazing mentor of mine for many, many years. Have huge amount of respect for the guy.
What's a favorite meal? I know you're famous for your green shakes or your green smoothies, but what's a favorite meal for you?
No, I'm really pretty basic at the moment, though. I absolutely love roasted vegetables, and my Latin American time is coming where I have lots of different beans and stuff like that. So absolutely love that at the moment. But I'm just about to get back into there's a chickpea omelette or pancake that I used to make that I was just talking with a friend a few days ago. That just reminded me. I thought, right, I'm going to be making that again because that's an absolutely amazing meal.
Give us one or two either websites or just technology that you avidly use that you think people definitely need to know about outside of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the basics. What are some other ones that you really like to use?
So I use Slack for managing from a team point of view. So we keep all of our communication in there. That's an amazing tool. In terms of the video component, this is just after the release of this massive video, Frameo, which is like frame.io. is a tool to be able to manage your video editing with, if you've got a video editor like we had. I've got somebody over in Macedonia and another person over in the UK. So being able to give feedback really easily at the specific points of a video, extremely powerful tool.
When you're stepping in, especially on the consulting side, what's one question that you really like to ask people in terms of starting point, looking for their curiosity, gain the most out of their life, their business? What's one question you like to start in, or just ask in general? What's one of your favorite questions?
It's good. I once we've really uncovered like a limit of some description. So let's say it's like, I really struggle to trust people, or feel that people are judging me, or I don't feel like I'm respected. One of the questions I love asking is, when did that first start? Because often what will happen is we'll end up getting back to somewhere in childhood. Usually it's somewhere between 4 to 8 years of age, but sometimes often in teenage years or adult years. We will get that first initial question allows us to get back to maybe a moment 5 or 10 years ago, and then we go back further and further and further again until all of a sudden we get back to a specific moment where it all began. And then we can work from there to break through those beliefs and bust through them and create new empowering beliefs and new values instead.
I know that sadly you recently lost your pet, but what was it like having a pet kangaroo?
Oh, it was awesome, Kanga. Oh man, it was she was an amazing part of our lives for many years. Right from when we were kids, right up until just a few years ago. So yeah, it was awesome. I think when I live over here and I mentioned that I had a kangaroo, people can't believe it, but yeah, absolutely did. It was beautiful. She was a beautiful creature to have. She was a big and important part of our lives growing up.
You always see the cartoons, but did she ever kick or anything like that? Because of the powerful kicks and the jumps. was there ever any boxing or anything?
She actually, like, a funny time. I was walking out one morning out of the house, and we had this lawn area, a grass area to the left. And if you can imagine, so we had a mid-sized dog, and a Kanga had her 2 paws, so front paws, on the back of my dog, and was jumping up and kicking her like with her 2 hind legs, and just lashing into her like again and again and again. I've still got that moment in my mind. It was so funny just seeing she was just laying into the dog. So I don't know what the dog did, but must have said something to piss her off a little bit.
And the dog probably never did that again. A valuable lesson there. So yeah. What when you obviously you're creating your legacy each and every day. But when you look back 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now, what do you hope that people say about you and your efforts?
The big thing for me is that I want to be a part of the solution to the biggest challenges that we're experiencing right now on this planet. I would love that in, like you said, 10, 20, 40, 50 years, that he was part of that solution, that he knew what was going on and he could see what was going on and he actually did something about it. The last thing that I would want, and this is kind of the fear, I guess, or the regret that I would have, is that if people looked at me in 50 years' time and said, you knew the challenges that were going on, as I believe that most people know on this planet now that are going on this planet, and you did nothing, what the hell were you thinking? That'd be the last thing that I would want on in terms of my existence, to feel that I knew that I could have done something and I didn't actually fulfill on that.
Well, where would you direct all of our listeners in terms of learning more, following you online, social media, website? Where would you direct everyone?
Yeah, 2 great places. So thrivingcollective.com is the website, and you can check out all of the different components that we've chatted about today. And then social media, so your Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and other social platforms. The handle is Ask Cameron Brown. So ASK Cameron Brown.
Well, Cameron, you definitely are a change maker, a global change maker at that, and we have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. We greatly appreciate you being on the podcast, and definitely look forward to staying in touch. So thanks for all you do and for being a guest on ChangeMakers.
Dude, it's been great. Thanks for having me. Really loved it today.
Thank you for listening to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Lipscomb & Pitts Insurance. To learn more about our guests and to share your stories of others leading by example, visit us online at citycurrent.com. Connect with us online using @CityCurrent or follow the conversation using the hashtag ChangeMakers. Now, think big, start small, and act now. Be a change maker.